I don't, I'm self-taught. I didn't go and have all these great connections with all these, institutions and people within institutions. So a lot of it was kind of paving my own way.
Hello, print friends, and welcome to the 86th episode of Pine Copper Lime, the internet's #1 printmaking podcast. I'm your host, Miranda Metcalf. I release weekly podcasts with people in the print world who are doing something a bit beyond the expected. So please subscribe on your podcast listening app of choice. You can also find Pine Copper Lime on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube, where you can find our full archive of past episodes there and take advantage of YouTube's free closed captioning service. All of this and more can be found at pinecopperlime.com. We also have a Patreon page, where supporters can join up at tiers that start at just $1 a month, and they all help us to keep bringing you printmaking content every week. You can also get cool thank yous like stickers and totes, and if that sounds like something you'd be interested in, check out the link in the show notes. Also, as some of you may know, we actually have a new special feature for our Patreon supporters, Shop Talk with our editor Tim Pauschak. This is where he has quick and dirty tips and tricks, technical chit-chat with our guests. So if you want to learn about what kind of paper they use and why, you can get that through Patreon at any level. It's also totally fine if you don't want to know more about that, because times are tough and weird, and maybe you want to save your pennies for actually getting to go eat in a restaurant now that you've been vaccinated. So if you just want to keep listening to the show and enjoy what you hear, we want you to do just that. Finally, if you want to show your love of printmaking to the world, we have merch of all kinds, from fun designs to show your PCL support and make print jokes to confuse and or intrigue your friends and family. Printmaking forever, shun the non-believers. Pine Copper Lime is brought to you by Speedball Art Products, who've been offering a diverse range of high-quality products to your creative practice since 1997. Products like their line of professional screen printing tools. Speedball gives professional-grade quality that doesn't have to ruin your budget. Their aluminum squeegees, scoop coaters, and high mesh count screens are perfectly suited to outfit your workspace without changing your books from black to red. So if you want to upgrade your space from hobbyist to pro, head on over to Speedball's website to see where you can pick up your new favorite setup. There's a link in the show notes. My guest this week is Angela Pilgrim, screen printer and founder of Fruishun Press in Newark, New Jersey. We'll talk about the influence of the 1990s, Spice Girls, being a self-taught artist, and making it without university connections, identity, and the perseverance of learning how to print. So, without further ado, sit back, relax, and prepare to make your dreams come to fruition with Angela Pilgrim. Hi, Angela. How's it going?
Hi, it's going pretty okay. I'm happy to join you on this podcast tonight.
I'm really happy that you could join me. I feel like we've been playing email tag a little bit, so it's always really fun when things come together and we actually get to connect. So thank you for spending some of your evening with me.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, I would love it, before we dive into your work and how you came to what you make and what influenced you and all of that great art talk, that great Pine Copper Line talk, could you please introduce yourself? And as I always ask my guests, to just tell people who you are and where you are and what you do.
So my name is Angela Pilgrim. I'm a printmaker and illustrator. I'm based in Newark, New Jersey, and I've been printmaking for about 6 years now. It's been a amazing experience. I've learned a lot. There's a lot more to learn, but I'm always up for that challenge when it comes to printmaking. Specifically, I've been working in screen printing. I've done a little bit of textile printing on fabric, on paper, and I've kind of dived into risography just recently. I believe it was in 2019. I kind of tried my hand at it, and I really, really loved it.
Excellent. And then, where did you grow up? And what kind of role did art play in that time in your life?
So I grew up in Paterson, New Jersey. It's a pretty bustling city, has a lot of different colors
Mm.
and people, and just a lot of overall inspiration. But I've always been drawn to art, specifically. I did a lot of drawing growing up, elementary school, even before that. I don't even know when I started drawing, but I just knew that it just kind of like took over
Mm.
once I discovered that I just really loved to do it. It was kind of like a zen for me. I didn't necessarily grow up in a rich upbringing or anything like that. So it was really a way to kind of like escape from where my family was at the time. It just, I remember just experiences as, just being in school and elementary school. And because I loved it so much, I became like the art girl, the
Right.
person you go for, the artwork. And if
Yeah.
I knew what I knew now, because we live in such a capitalist society, I would have kind of flipped that a little bit and got a little money, but
Mm-hmm.
but I love to do it, and I was really drawn to a lot of cartoons and anime. I was really into anime,
Mm.
and it really served kind of like the ship to kind of like bring me to where I am now. And I've always been encouraged by my parents. They've always encouraged me, always supported me. So that kind of gave me a bigger drive to continue to do what I love to do.
Wonderful. Yeah. And so if it was the 1990s, it was that like
Yeah,
Sailor Moon,
yeah.
Dragon Ball Z? What was your anime of choice?
Yeah, it was definitely a lot of Sailor Moon, but there was a lot of different, I guess it's kind of like anime, but it was like Digimon
Oh
and
yeah,
things like
yeah.
that on, just regular television. And just like even watching Cartoon Network and seeing your Scooby-Doo and seeing all of these like, nostalgic cartoons that I'm like, wow, like I would love to I've always thought about, the people behind it. And it
Mm.
would be great to kind of, where did they get their inspiration from to be doing something like this and just broadcasting their art on television. And that really shaped kind of like my goal that was set to not specifically to be like super famous, but more so to do something I love to do. But it definitely was Sailor Moon, and there was a really, really old anime called Rurouni Kenshin, and it
Mm.
was like I think it was like 90 to 100 episodes that I watched when I was younger, and I was just really drawn to it. But yeah, it was a really interesting time. I was really into Spice Girls. I was totally a '90s kid, so I was
Yeah.
inspired by all these different colors, especially living in Paterson.
I think that's so interesting that even as a young person, you were seeing the cartoons as art, which I think is so interesting because I was an anime kid of the 90s myself and watched what they had on Cartoon Network as an offering, but then I would go to Blockbuster, in the before 4
Hmm.
time with Blockbusters and to the
Yeah.
anime section. And, you couldn't Google what any of it was. You just had to grab whatever VHS or DVD they had and see what happened. And, sometimes you'd get it home and it'd be like, oh,
Exactly.
God. Like,
Yeah.
I got it. This isn't what I
Yes,
wanted.
yes.
But even though I loved it so much, I never really thought of it as art. I got very involved in the aesthetic of it, which I loved. I loved the look of it, but I love how you,
Hmm.
as a budding artist, were already thinking about, okay, this is something someone drew. This is something that someone is making their career off of.
Yeah, definitely. And just to, because I was so much in love with, these different characters that I was looking at, it was like, okay, well, I need to learn how to. I was naturally drawn to drawing people
Mm.
because, these cartoons were expressed from, the characteristics of people, even if it was a dog or an animal or something like that that talked, at the time. So I would find myself just like, this is what I want to do. So I would find myself kind of weirdly staring at people to kind of study their face and, like, oh, that's the shape of their eye and kind of break it down into shapes. And that really lended a hand. And just to go back to your Blockbuster
Mm.
comment, it's really interesting because I really liked the aesthetic as well of the 90s and also the 80s
Yeah.
when I look back, like, when I was older. But what I realized was that, you know, I guess subconsciously I kind of drew a lot of inspiration in my own work, making it now and the different eras that I kind of like covered. It's just there's a analog aspect of it that is really,
Yeah.
really warm and kind of nostalgic, which is really nice too. So sad to see Blockbuster had left.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and so when you say analog, do you mean in the drawing style, in that way that it's like a person?
Yeah,
And I think now, everything is done on computers when they go to make cartoons, but at one point it was
exactly.
rows and rows of artists drawing by hand with those little plastic
Hmm.
transparencies. Yeah.
Definitely. And I'm actually learning a little bit about Procreate right now and just looking back at those old videos with like the rotoscoping and how, people really, these artists created these, animations and it was again based off of like real movements and it's just the breakdown of it is really amazing. So it's really amazing experience just to be an artist, to be honest. There's just so many
Mm.
avenues.
Yeah. Well, and I think particularly if you're open to all the different things that art can be, if you don't have this really narrow focus that art is oil on a canvas that hangs in a museum, which I think some people think, and that
Yeah.
you grew up with that openness of seeing cartoons, which I think some people will just be like, "Oh, it's just a cartoon," and you'd be like, "No, it's thousands and thousands of drawings, is what it is."
Exactly,
Yeah,
exactly. And I think if people really saw the back, a lot of times people see the art and they don't see what led up to creating that art. And, you can go into an artist studio and you can see all these great works, but if the artist really broke down how they did it and why they did it, then it's like a whole nother appreciation for it. So I think it's really education as well and taking the time to, want to learn about it,
for
like
sure.
anything.
Yeah, for sure. So, I guess speaking of, it's a good way to segue into my next question, which is about education. And I'm wondering if you could tell us about your career path as a self-taught artist.
So my career path, specifically leading up to just being a printmaker, traditionally I was doing a lot of illustration for a lot of different, like for a long, long time.
Mm.
And then at some point I just was like, man, I really need to, I love what I'm doing, but I really need to challenge myself. And at that particular time in 2015, I said, well, I don't, I'm self taught. I didn't go and have all these great connections with all these, institutions and people within institutions. So a lot of it was kind of paving my own way, which I liked. I liked that. I like having that in my hand to be able to do that, just to kind of challenge myself. But what I learned was that I was able to kind of create opportunities for myself. So I applied for a residency in 2015 in Newark, and it was an artist in residence program by the Newark Print Shop,
Mm.
and it was a juried proposal process that I had to submit my work and what I was going to create while I was in this like fully functional print shop. And I think I applied like the last day of the yeah, I really, yeah, it was the last day. And I remember like a month later or so just getting, receiving, the congratulations for it. And I was like, okay, this is like my chance to do something different. I know
Mm.
nothing about printmaking, but I'm willing to learn. And it was just interesting. And the only reason I knew about it was because I was on a newsletter for the print shop. And I remember at the time, I walked into the print shop when it was very grassroots and they were at another location, and I just stumbled upon it. And I was introduced to it kind of like in this really organic way. and this was like maybe a year or two late before that, so I knew about the place. And it was just a place where it was like a lot of artists coming together and creating and learning about printmaking. There was a specific master printer there, Stephen McKenzie, who pretty much showed me like everything I needed to know about printmaking. So with that, again, we'll fast forward. I applied in 2015, received the residency, and then I was like, okay, well, I'm going to create my biggest proposal idea was to create Black women on these large fabric, just stretch fabric. And, I just wanted to kind of dive into Black beauty and
Yeah.
womanhood and how it's perceived in the world. And that was like my overall message, because at the time I was also discovering things about myself. So I felt like it was really a full expression of who I was at the time, and which continues to bud and, grow.
Yeah. Yeah. And so that was so interesting. So you applied for it without any background in printmaking. Did you sort of know about it a bit? I mean, I know that probably you knew silkscreen. That's sort of the one that most people know. But
Hmm.
did you have a lot of experience, or did you come to it with any sense of expectation?
I totally came to it with no experience at
Mm.
all. I think that I might have, if I can kind of go into my memory bank,
Mm.
maybe I went to an open print club night, and it's basically like a open Wednesday night where the community comes to the print shop, and for $10 they would be able to learn how to print. So it was a lot of folks from the Newark community that I didn't know, and this was like a bustling new art scene, so everything was very new. At the time, I was living in Hackensack, New Jersey,
Mm.
so it was kind of like a just jump in the pond, and so to speak. And I think that I learned maybe just like maybe one night that I came after stumbling upon the print shop one
Mm.
day, and I was, hey, come back again. We have these open Wednesday nights, and for $10 you can, print on paper, you could print on a t-shirt, we'll show you how to create, your work through the computer and how to get it on a screen. And at the time, I didn't really register what was really going on. A lot of it was just like, okay, nod and just kind of observe. So I said, hey, I don't know everything there needs to know about printmaking, but I'm willing to learn, and I was willing to challenge myself. I think I was really ready for that at the
Yeah,
time.
that's good. And then it just kind of obviously it had this influence on you where it continued in your practice, and now you
Yeah.
identify as a printmaker. What do you think it was about printmaking that really that made you realize that you wanted this to be a part of your art practice in a major way?
So I think at the time, because I was just so bored of what I was doing, and it was like, hey, I really need to challenge myself. When I got the residency, I felt like that was the chance to do that. But not only that, what I loved about it was it really taught me a lot of life lessons. Just thinking about 6 years ago, I think I was 23. So I'm very young, and,
Mm.
young to this art scene that is, continuing to grow. And it was actually growing way before I was there, but it's just continuing to be this beautiful thing. And it really taught me just spending 15 hours like in the print shop at once, because I wanted to learn. I wanted to learn. And it was just like, it really taught me perseverance.
Mm.
It really taught me, because screen printing is definitely not something where it's like this, oh, paintbrush on the canvas. Not saying anything about it's not hard to paint or anything. I don't want, to make anybody feel, you know, but it was just, there's a lot of involvement in your full body, um,
Yes.
your back, your arms, your so at the time it was just like, how can I kind of create my mind to be focused on something that I want to do, and I can persevere and be determined to learn something at the same time. And it really challenged me to kind of stick with something that, may be hard, but a challenge is a challenge, and a challenge can be a good thing. And it took me a while, actually, when I was printing, to kind of be okay with mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
So that was, the misprints and the, you didn't apply enough pressure on the screen, or hey, there's not enough ink, or, the screen is, it could have been burned better, you got to start the whole process over, you know. It really challenged me in really, really great ways about patience as well. For a very long time of the residency, like for a good 4 months, where I was just going crazy about making the work that I said I'm going to make.
Mm-hmm.
um, it was just wow, like, I really have to be patient with I'm learning,
Yeah.
but I'm also challenging myself to be really great at it.
I love it. The challenge and the yeah, and that what you're saying about it being a full body experience is so true. And I think something that artists who really like to live their work, I think, are often drawn to printmaking in that way, of just the
Yeah.
leaning over and pulling a giant squeegee across a huge print, and you have to get the pressure just right and the angle just right and all of that. It really is skill and that corporeal art making for sure.
Yeah, and it can be very empowering, to
Mm,
just know that, there's a lot of strength in, if you look back at pictures of yourself, and, for myself at least, but if you look back at, I look back at pictures and say to myself, well, you know what, I feel the most empowered doing something that I love to do.
mm,
And you can see the determination and, the focus. And, I think that was really a driving force to really stay with it. And it was really, really a great thing to be a Black woman doing it
mm,
in a place that maybe, it was a new residency program, but, I didn't really have any kind of like blueprint other than my foremothers that I was
mm.
just learning about. But, I did have a blueprint for, okay, this person who looks like me came
Yeah.
here and, made work and really, really, really showed up and showed out, to kind of like, pass the baton to me. So I felt a lot of pressure on me to be really, really good at what I'm doing,
Mm.
because that opened the door for more people who look like me to want to do that. So that was really important. And that sense of education and community really stuck with me.
So, to switch gears a little bit and talk kind of more
Hmm.
directly about your practice and your subject
Hmm.
matter. And so, you were saying that you draw inspiration from the subject of Black beauty and womanhood and how that's perceived in the world. And I'm wondering if you could speak to a little bit about your experiences with this growing up, and maybe specifically in the framework of when I read or listen to podcasts or something about kind of cultural criticism of the 1990s. One of the things that comes up over and over again is that in the 1990s, it was very white, very blonde, very thin. These were the
Yeah.
kind of like the classic icons of the 90s. And I mean, we had Mel B in the Spice Girls, but that she was
I remember.
definitely, yeah, she was an outlier. And so, and not even not even from American culture. So
Yeah.
I'd love to just talk about, considering that the aesthetic of your work and is rooted a lot in that look of the 90s and kind of how it relates to that time when we were not seeing diverse examples of beauty in women, even less so than now. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. My journey with my womanhood has been very, very interesting because a lot of me growing up was kind of trying to maneuver in this world of figuring out who I was and why I was important. A lot of it came from maybe just what, again, like what we see in media, and, a lot of shame around who I was or what I looked like. At
Mm.
one point, I didn't even refer to myself as like Black, like I referred to myself as clear,
Mm.
and what type of narrative is that, when you show up as this person and the society doesn't see you as that, right? But I think deeply about how my presence can be not only, a it can be something that could be very joyful, but it can also be something that's very threatening. And me not understanding that growing up, but drawing to these figures that I'm seeing in the media and saying, okay, well, I don't want to wear my hair natural. I don't know anything about it. It really strips away if you don't have like really really strong, and I say strong loosely, but more so figures that can really be. My mom is a big mentor to me, but she can only teach me from what she knows and from her own experience. So, if she didn't have those experiences, because I'm darker than her, she's very, very light skinned, she has her own set of things that she dealt with as well. That may be parallel to mine, but with that, if you're not seeing that as like at the forefront of what you're being taught all the time, you're looking for it outside, and you have all this media around you, and this is what is telling you what is right and what is wrong. And I found myself straightening my hair, and we grew up with perms, and I speak about it in my work now. This is what really shaped my childhood, and it was like, is this a shameful thing, or is this something that should empower us, and why are we doing these things? In my adult years, I had to look for that inspiration that I wasn't directly being taught growing up, but I had to kind of discover it on my own. And I always look at my work as kind of like it's like a legacy of discovering oneself as a Black woman in America and, the world. And, you know, amplifying the intricacies of that and how beautiful it is and how important it is. And it's expressed through your appearance, it's expressed through your life and your traditions and your triumphs and your struggles. And that's what was really, really important for me. I think things happen at a certain time when you need to. And I felt like it was a rebirth of who I was, especially when I got this residency. I'm learning something new. And then I'm going into this actually creating work that amplifies what matters to me was really so important. And what I've learned along the way was that there was a lot of parallel narratives to my experience. Being able to be around other Black artists and other women now and having really a community really showed me that, we kind of went through the same thing, and it's like that's what makes that person really connect with the work, which is so important. Sitting at the stove on a Sunday and you have a hot comb to your hair because your mom is saying we have to get ready for church and I have to straighten your hair, and this is what this is what is deemed appropriate, and you have big curls, and because I straightened your hair and curled it into a curl because it has to be neat, and it's kind of like indoctrined in us, and it's almost like you have to rediscover yourself and rediscover why you're important and why you should talk about that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that makes a lot of sense, and I think that a lot of people can identify with that experience of particularly growing up and having these things that are part of your life that you don't really question because you're just a little kid, right? You're like, this is the world,
Yep.
this is the universe, this is all I know. And then going out into the world and finding your own way and meeting someone and saying, "Oh my gosh, that happened to you as well. Did that how did that feel for you?" It's really powerful. And I think it's
Yeah.
it's particularly powerful for people who are in marginalized communities. I think it's something that queer kids experience on a huge way.
Hmm.
And just this idea of oh, I feel so much a connection with you because we didn't know each other, but we were going through the same thing. And
Exactly.
yeah, and it's really, as I think you say, like empowering and beautiful to then have that experience as a grown person and to feel sort of seen and validated in the experiences that you've had. Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. Definitely. So it's a great journey.
Yeah, it is. It's the journey of self discovery and growth is it's really a blessing to be able to be on it for sure. Yeah. So you were talking about maybe kind of looking for idols for Black beauty, and it sounded like you found some, or in your journey you did come to find people who you could kind of look to and see reflected back something that felt more true to you. Do you have any particular women in mind, or any women that you draw inspiration
Oh,
from even today?
yeah, definitely. And of course, you have Elizabeth Catlett and you have your four mothers and Emma Amos and all of these great Black female printmakers that I learned about that actually, spoke about things that really mattered to me as well. But, just what I saw in media, Diana Ross and Donna Summer and these performers who were really, really honing in on who they were and what that represented, like that really, really raw womanhood that like a lot of people really looked up to. And I particularly remember when I started my residency, I had to revisit all of these different black hair ads and get inspiration from that, and magazines and poetry, where these black women were talking about the experience, and maybe it wasn't in a visual, you would probably say a little bit visual because words become visual as you think about them, but more so in a this eloquent way that really helped me kind of connect to their body of work too. I think I continue to learn more, and I think the great thing about the time that we're in is just, it's that all of these women who kind of like shaped the path for all of these things to happen and for people to feel empowered, it kind of birthed new women who you can draw inspiration from. You see it on Instagram, media, um, just and even people in your home, like there's poets here in Newark, there's artists, there's poetry circles, there's muralists here, that have a story as well, and those people matter too. So I draw inspiration from a lot of different things, and a lot of different people, and it's not just limited to media, but it was definitely influenced. A lot of my work is influenced by
Yeah.
what would be the token of what everybody have seen before, in media. So
Yeah. And so, and in terms of the actual aesthetic of the work, it really has this 80s, 90s, I guess late 80s, early 90s feel to it. And you've really managed to capture it so well. Like it looks like, it has this feeling so strongly of what is up on the wall of salons when I was a kid, going to
mm-hmm.
get my hair cut for $5 at Supercuts or whatever it was doing. And I'm wondering kind of how you go about capturing that, and if you use your experience as an illustrator to sort of do so, and kind of breaking down an image and understanding what's important, as you were talking about, like looking at someone's eyes and understanding the shape of them and how that lets you identify who this is an illustration of. And if you use that mind at all to say, okay, how do I make this look like it's from this time and place, and really get that message really clearly, just without words, just using the visuals to do so.
So I am a really, really big fan of color and really like complementary, not just color, but complementary colors that evoke some type of emotion. I'm really drawn to the color pink because it's just so warm, and I think it's just so expressive in its own right. And I've always been drawn to that. But I create mood boards where I'm, different patterns and things that I would be, African patterns, sometimes. And it's like, how can I, reconstruct this to kind of look like mine? I'm really into photography. That's one of the things that I don't really talk too much about, but that was really what shaped my eye growing up, especially throughout high school and elementary school. So what I would do is I would take my camera everywhere. So I would look at patterns, not even just on media, but just like in the world. It's like, hey, this pattern looks really, really nice. This is like kind of like a a swirly type of, feel, and it makes me feel happy, and it makes me feel, because a lot of my work is expressing these women in really, really happy states and
Yeah.
empowered, expressive, and comfortable, and having some air of confidence. So I'm using these uplifting colors to kind of amplify that. But creating mood boards and studying different artists, but saying, okay, well, how do I shape my voice around what I'm trying to convey? I like that little part, but I would do it a little bit different. So let me draw this and see how this works. And it's a lot of experimentation. I like to think of my head as like all these gears turning, and just like, I can be asleep and say, okay, well, let me go to my notes and, write something down, because there's, a concept I want to explore. I don't know how it's going to happen, but I have books upon books about, just different concepts that I wanted to explore earlier on in my art career that I forgot about, but I can revisit and say, okay, well, now that I've learned all this, how can I express this in a way that makes sense for where I am now?
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. That's sort of, it sounds almost like it's more intuitive, that you draw from everything you're kind of letting into your life in this sort of conscious way.
Exactly.
And yeah,
Exactly.
and I was thinking about it in a very precise way. Very like if you
Yeah,
could find
it's
the formula, but that's not it. Yeah.
no, it's not. It's very intuitive, but it's also a spiritual thing. Like, and I don't really say this often, but one of the things that I actually do before I is kind of like a method to like my madness is I always pray before I make a piece, and it kind of connects me to my work as well. And it kind of gives me it aids me in kind of expressing what I want to say in the most purest and honest way. So it could be looked at as weird, but it makes sense for me
You know, it makes
because it's
total
important.
sense. It is, and I think that in the act of prayer, one of the things that you're doing is kind of getting out of your own way. You know,
Right.
you're saying I am not the most important thing. I am not the center of the universe. There is something bigger than me. And
Exactly.
you're stepping out of that me sort of thing that we can get into. And I think it's one of
Exactly.
the best things you can do before trying to create something is to just shut that ego down a bit, and say like, okay, like
Yeah.
what is God or what is the universe going to give to me in this moment?
Right.
That's yeah. No, I think I definitely understand.
I always look at myself as I look at myself as a vessel more
Mm-hmm.
so than, like you said, like really thinking about the I mantra, but just, how can I be a better service to people through my work? How I'm expressing it. That's why I'm so drawn to community. Like, one of the great aspects of having that residency was me being able to go into that print shop, and one of the exchanges of being a resident was, hey, you have to, be a shop monitor for 2 days. And, there's going to be folks who have questions about things. And that really made me have to learn about things. But not only that, what I got really pumped up for was the open print nights, because that's when the whole community comes and
Yeah.
I can really be there with that person. I've met so many beautiful people that have come through that print shop that I'm still friends with to today. And it's amazing, and just to be able to help someone create something that means a lot to them, and then express it in a way that they haven't done before, because I was there, so that's really important to me. So it's this whole spiritual community thing that I really try to amplify behind my work, and it's kind of the intricacies of what is seen through my work. That makes
Yeah,
sense.
absolutely, absolutely. Because that's one of the themes of the podcast that I love, that I never get sick of philosophizing about, is the way that printmaking creates community and keeps community together. There's something about
Exactly.
a print shop, there's something about the magic of pulling ink through a silk screen and lifting up the screen and then all of a
Mm-hmm.
sudden there's something that there wasn't there before, and it has this magic moment that you don't get with other forms of art. You don't get it with painting.
Yeah.
You don't have the that sparkle moment when you lift up the paper, you lift up the screen, and there it is. It's the complete image, and it people are
Yeah.
just drawn to it and drawn and want to be a part of it.
Yeah. And if you think about it just like a philosophical kind of point of view, you think about it's just ideas materialized in a something that's tangible that somebody can take, not in a way where it's, they can hold the image on the surface, right? So it is tangible, but then also just knowing that this thing that you thought of is actually existing now. Like if you think about everything that's around us started as a thought, so thoughts become things. So it's really beautiful.
Yeah, I. It's so funny you should say that because one of my pet peeves is when people in marketing refer to something as curated, like, oh, it's a
Yeah,
curated selection of wines, or it's a curated, and I'm like, literally everything is curated. Like everything you interact with,
yeah,
somebody
yeah.
chose what to put in it and what not to put in it, and it's just you're
Mm-hmm.
just saying something that doesn't mean anything, and I think it kind of reflects on what you're saying about how everything that we touch, from like the notepad that I'm writing in to the pen, somebody made a decision that it needed to be in the world and put thought and effort into how that should happen. And
Exactly.
yeah, and to create the hierarchy of, oh, like this is art and this isn't art. It breaks down really quickly when you start to get into the nuts and bolts of it. And so I was sort of curious too about looking at some of your work, and it's I've noticed that you'll actually place specific products in it, like the mango butter, or you've got incredible image of a woman at a table, and she's on the right side of the composition, and she's got a comb, and she's sort of she's touching her hair, and she has a product sort of facing the viewer, almost like it's an advert or something like that. And
Yeah.
and I'm curious about, yeah, your use of these specific brands. Is it brands that you had a connection to growing up? Is it something that speaks to sort of community for you? Where did they come from? These product, almost like the product placement, for lack of a better word, that appears
Yeah,
in your
yeah.
work.
I didn't even think about it like that, but yeah, that's true. So a lot of these products were products that I definitely was introduced to when I was younger. And it's kind of become like an icon in a way that kind of connects the narrative between someone who used that before in their childhood to my narrative. So it kind of connects, that viewer to the work and say, well, I see you and I know how, on Sundays you were sitting there and you were getting your hair braided and you had this blue magic sitting there, and your mom was dipping her finger on a hot summer, morning, and she was just, greasing your scalp, or on a Sunday when, your mom had to put this hairdressing to make sure that, and it sizzled, and you remember the smell. You remember, how it felt. You remember having to hold your ear because that hot comb, if it hit your ear, you knew you were done for, So it's kind of, these different products definitely it goes back to like the subject of nostalgia, and yes, these things can have like a derogatory, when you think kind of nature about it, in a way where it's like, okay, you were using these products to straighten your hair, but they also were used to grow your hair. This is what we were taught. Like we've grown so much in the natural hair community now with so many products that we didn't have,
Yeah.
you know, back at that time. And it's like, this is all we had, and there weren't, business owners that were taking a chance, and Black business owners who were taking a chance on their product because they really, they were getting all this, money and backing for it. maybe they were, but on a small scale. But all of these commercial products were, what we grabbed,
Yeah.
and we used. And it became kind of part of our hair rituals. And I think that was so important to connect that nostalgic time to, you know, how we view our hair now and what we've learned. It's kind of learning from the journey. And specific work that you mentioned, Sabrina Gets Ready.
Yeah.
That's the
Yeah.
title of it. So that particular work was really interesting because I, at the time, aside from me being kind of like, I feel like I'm like a Jill of all trades, right? So
Uh-huh.
aside from me of hopefully a master of all at some point, but one thing that I love to do is I like to design. So I didn't go to school for design. No, I didn't. Like anything else I've done in my art career, I've challenged myself. So what I attempted to do, and I succeeded, and I'm very proud of it, was I created these perm boxes, and these perm boxes were homage to the perm boxes that we use when we were younger, straightening our hair. But instead of putting all of these, oh, this is what's going to make your hair look this way, I flipped it and said, okay, well, love your natural hair, and it's a picture of a woman with natural hair, and then in the back it's like, the ingredients of, and the mantra that you should teach yourself. And it's not to say that women shouldn't have every other hairstyle. We're very versatile,
Yeah.
and our hair is very sculptural, which is beautiful,
Yeah.
right? So we can do so many things, and it's so, tough, and we can withstand a lot to our hair. But
Yeah.
what I wanted to highlight with that project was just, love your natural hair. So I decided to have like a photo shoot to kind of like show off those boxes. And my friend photographer, he shot them, and I got a few models in the community of Newark, and we just wanted to create this Afro sheen type inspired photo shoot. And from that, I was, with the narrative continuing, I got these beautiful photos that I absolutely love. And I didn't really go so far with it because it was like, what am I going to do with these boxes? It's just like a project, right?
Yeah.
But it really took on a life of its own because from those pictures, I then illustrated the same picture, but then I turned it into a risograph. And then, it's kind of like reimagining what that narrative can look like in different forms of medium.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. I love it when printmaking, sort of migrates from just this. It's on Reeves BFK and we put it in a frame, like and then we're
Yeah.
done. But it's
Yeah.
and it kind of you've actually created a new object in the world that people can then interact with, and then the photo shoot and then having been turned back into print. That's just that's a
Yeah.
great journey. Oh, that's great. In the time that we've got left, you have founded an Fruishun Press. Is it? How am I saying it?
Yes.
Please help me.
So it's fruition.
Fruition.
So it's
Yeah,
like
yeah.
fruition. So it's like fruits, and then you know Oshun, and how she's kind of like the mother of. I like to say realizing what you can do. So it's like fruits that are becoming. It's kind of back to like kind of mantra of a thought that is turned tangible because you just thought of it and then you created it. So I just named it Fruition. So yeah, so I founded Fruition Press in 2018, and it was really kind of like it was an answer to not having a space to work, which for artists, like spaces is just, it could be super hard, right?
Yeah.
Especially when COVID hit, and even before that, like I was kind of taking a hiatus from like making a whole bunch of new work because how I envisioned my space to be was to make sure that I had all of my materials, I can just roll over and I can just print. So I was actually able to do that, and I created a space in my apartment, which It housed about 50 screens.
Oh, wow.
I have yeah, and actually, you know, it's a blessing. It truly is, because a few years before that, I was thinking, man, I need screens. And then I just got hooked up with some screens like that a print shop didn't need anymore. Like
Yeah.
it just happened that way. And it was because I knew this person, and I was, this person knew this person. So it was really, really, it just happened in a really organic way when it needed to be. And that's when I knew, okay, now I need to like really get more stuff. And from there, I acquired 2 exposure units. And then I have like a one arm press, and I have my inks. And I said, okay, well, hey, listen, instead of paying for some type of studio space somewhere, at that time I said, let me just make do with what I have. So I created all of these prints, my most recent prints in my studio now, which is I'm now moved because I'm expanding, but in that apartment. And it just kind of took on a life of its own, because before COVID hit, my plan was to have these one-on-one workshops to kind of like make sure that I can kind of like, focus in on with one person and kind of show them how to print, and, to kind of, again, make a idea turn into something tangible, and just have some type of skill that can aid in some type of monetary opportunity.
Yeah.
A lot of folks that came into the print shop, like I saw them making these amazing things, and then you would see them at different shows around Newark, and they're selling their shirts, and it was beautiful. So I said, man, if I can do more of that within my own confines of my space, that would be great. And I just start small, and just having that sense of community, that is being taught by me specifically. So I continue to expand. My studio has expanded now. So shortly, in a few weeks, I'll be, developing a little bit more of the space, and then I'll show like on social media and things like that. And then at some point, I believe, this COVID thing kind of, I don't know where we're going with COVID, but
Yeah.
if it kind of gets alleviated, then I would like to introduce people into the space to kind of continue that goal of
Yeah.
making sure that people are making things, and education, and giving them visibility. You can be a novice, or you can be a printmaker and teach me something.
Yeah.
It can just take on a life of its own. So, but mostly it's definitely education and visibility at the forefront. Definitely.
Yeah. Oh, that sounds great. That is really exciting. I'm jealous that I can't come and see it in person. That sounds like a really
Hopefully
beautiful
one
thing you're
day.
building. Yeah, I would love it. Again, it's like I feel that way about COVID, where it's just, I mean, I haven't been home in 2 years. I miss my family so much, and I
Yeah.
would love to be back in the States for a while, but it's just this barrier of just not knowing, and we have a lot of reason to be hopeful, but you don't
Yeah.
know until you know, and then there's all these other questions about, okay, then like, is the airline industry going to be ready to accept people, and all kinds of things. Yeah, so
Exactly.
yeah.
Exactly.
Well, before we say goodbye, can you please tell our dear listeners where they can find Fruishun Press, where they can find you, where they can buy cool t-shirts and prints from you, and support you in your work, and follow along with the growth of the press and all that good stuff?
Okay, so I've been navigating the Instagram web right now. My handle is at a pilgrim, so that's at a PLGRM. My Fruishun Press can be found at Fruishun, FRUISHUN Press. And I have a brand that is slowly going to open up, hopefully later on this year, where I can just have like small prints and things like that, where folks can get things at affordable prices. And that's at FRUISHUN Fruishun. And I can be found on angelapilgrim.com, and you can read about Fruishun Press Studio there on that webpage.
Excellent. Well, I will put links to all of that, and then so yeah, it's like Fruishun the Press, Fruishun the brand, and Angela Pilgrim the artist. I will put links to
Yes.
all of those different ways people can follow your work and what you do. And thank you so much for spending some time with me. And it was just great to talk about the 90s with another like 90s kid,
Yeah.
and connect and learn about what's going on in the Newark art scene. It sounds really interesting, so I do hope I get a chance to see it, and I hope you get a chance to come see Bangkok. If you love color, Bangkok is a great place to be. It's the food, the prints here. It's really, really vibrant, constant like color and stimulus wherever you look. So I think you'd like it here.
Thank you. Thank you. And I'm definitely going to take your honeymoon tips as well.
Yes.
And I want to thank you so much. I'm always so grateful for any opportunity to just speak about my work and, just to be connected with you folks. And please keep in touch. And I'm here, whatever you need. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Well, that's our show for this week. Join me again next week when my guest will be Guy Levine. We'll talk about learning Mezzotint before YouTube, tool making, the human body as communicator. You won't want to miss it. This episode, like all episodes, was written and produced by me, Miranda Metcalf, with editing help from Timothy Pauschak and music by Joshua Weber. I'll see you next week.